Hi, welcome back to The In-Between. My name is Camille. The in-between is that space between what was and what is yet to be. It's the space between endings and beginnings. It's the space of transformation. And we've been journeying through the emotional terrain of that type of change. I call it the inner landscape. Previously, we were in the change cycle, the first area of change, which dealt with the structural components of change. It started with being cracked open, and it ended with a breakthrough. And here in the inner landscape, we've arrived at the final phase of what is happening within us, how it is that we're feeling when we go through change, uncertainty, and rebirth. And so today, I want to talk about grief. It is totally normal and natural to feel grief during times of change. In fact, it's necessary to feel the grief that we feel when we're going through change, whether we initiated that change or it was imposed upon us. Doesn't really matter, because change in and of itself is always asking us to let go of something in order to become something else. And in that letting go, we experience grief. Grief is a way in which we remember how much we loved someone or something or even a version of ourselves. Grief reshapes us. It marks our life. And it is so important in the new design model and in the in-between to create a space for grief and to make sure we walk with it as long as we need to so that we can feel it. And when we get on the other side of it, know that we honored it the best way that we knew how. Now, in the old design model, we don't have a lot of really good or healthy tools when it comes to grief. You go to a funeral service during your lunch hour, and then you're expected to come back and go to work. Now, again, when I talk like this, these are generic observational statements, certainly not true for everyone and every moment of loss. But it's pretty true that we just don't know how to do death. And maybe that's because we're constantly trying to keep ourselves alive and youthful, that when loss happens, we're at a loss as to how to deal with it. Now, in the in-between, there's all sorts of loss. Obviously, you could literally lose a loved one, whether quickly and suddenly, as was the case for me in November, or because of a long illness. Either way, when someone physically crosses over into the spirit world and they're no longer with us, you better believe we are going through grief, sadness, we're mourning, maybe there's anger, our hearts are extremely tender. And also, when you're going through transformation and when you're going through change, the loss could be less obvious. You could be grieving the loss of an unmet dream. One of the things I had to do in this journey was to get very real about dreams and goals that I've had for a while and I've worked hard to accomplish. However, for whatever reason, they simply did not come into fruition. It didn't happen. And as I've been going through my massive change, I had to, and I wanted to, ask the important questions, which one of them is this something I really, really feel deeply connected to? Or am I just feeling or thinking that I've got to do this because, after all, I've invested all this time and effort and money into it. I can't just let it go. But in fact, that's exactly what I had to do in order for me to be available for new dreams, a new vision, new goals. And so, even though we know that we have to let go, whether it's an unmet dream, a friendship or a relationship that's run its course, maybe you've been married or in a committed relationship, and either you're ending it or your partner is, even though we can intellectually understand why something is no longer a match for us, why something is not in our highest and greatest good, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that there isn't loss and grief and sadness. Of course there is. In the old design model, we tend to boogie right through grief. Why? Because it's very uncomfortable. It's messy. It's emotional. And it can kick the door open to other grief that's not been fully processed. And so we know how to numb it, avoid it, rush through it. But in the new design model and in the in-between, we come at it from a very different approach. We come at it with compassion, with reverence, with respect, and with a willingness to feel it, no matter how long it takes, no matter how deep we have to go. We are willing to feel the grief that comes with transformation and change. We do it for a variety of reasons. One, because it deserves it. If you feel grief right now because of the changes you're going through or the change someone imposed upon you, I hope that you put your hand on your heart, your tender heart, and bring compassion to the one within that is hurting, that is grieving, that is upset, that is mourning. I hope you simply put your hand on your heart and let yourself know, I got you. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to walk through this together. And that's the other truth in the in-between and in the new design model. We are here to feel it, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's messy, even if it causes us to cry in ways we've never cried before. We are here for it because we want to be fully present for all the feelings that come with change, that are a part of the inner terrain of transformation. And you better believe grief is right up there with the rest of them. And so if you're grieving right now, I hope that you'll give yourself permission to stay with those feelings as long as you have to. Because what I've finally have come to understand through experience, and this was particularly true in November when my dear friend's husband, also a friend of mine, had a neurological fatal disease that we didn't know about until 2 weeks in. And by then, we had lost a considerable amount of him. And then a week later, he died. That experience made me realize that because my girlfriend and I stayed as present as we could for the shock and the horror of what we were going through, that because we leaned into our spiritual practices and utilized them in deep ways, we emptied that bank account during that month. And the good news is we had been making deposits for years. And that's the thing about this kind of work. You're making deposits. You never know when you're going to have a massive withdrawal. And we did in November. But my point is that because we were conscious and we were willing to walk with it in real time and feel as much of it as we could, to cry it out, use the language of shock for what it was that we were dealing with. By the time Jeff passed away and we were on the other side of something that totally blew our minds and our hearts wide open, we also discovered a sense of completeness that we didn't realize we were creating for ourselves. But in retrospect, because we were willing to feel as much as we could every day and every night, by the time we were through it and now in a new place with it, we realized the gift we gave ourselves. And that is why I'm sharing this with you. Because if you can utilize the other information about the inner landscape and the emotional terrain of change in a way that helps you, comforts you, brings respect to what it is you're feeling, you will find the journey of grief very, very different. Not to say it eliminates the tears, the tenderness, the confusion, the anger, and all the things that are mashed up inside grief. However, by feeling it, by showing up for it, by creating a little bit of time every day or every night to open the door so that all those feelings can be expressed and you can be present for it, holding space for your own self, maybe having a friend or a loved one or a partner that can be there with you as well. But if you don't have any of that and it's just you, what I have found to be very helpful is set aside some time when you open that door and you just sit there. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe something happens. It's not about that. It's just about creating the space for your grief, bringing reverence and respect for the losses that you've been going through and that you're still going through while you're navigating the terrain of change, uncertainty, and eventually rebirth. So in the new design for living, and especially in the in-between, grief is normal and it's necessary. Another thing that's very, very helpful is ritual. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Lighting a candle is the most universal and most ancient ritual of mankind and of womankind. Maybe just lighting a candle is all you need. If you have a chime, you could hit the chime. Trust that you know the atmosphere and the ritual that you need in that moment, because it will change, to make space for your grief, to acknowledge it, to welcome those difficult, intense, messy feelings up. Because when you create the space, when you say, it's okay, I've put aside this time for us to feel this tenderness, because it's vulnerable to feel grief. It's very vulnerable. But when you do it mindfully and with reverence, it is so beautiful. It is one of the great gifts of self-love that we can give ourselves. So ritual is a strategy. Creating actual time, place, and space to be with your grief is a strategy. Another strategy is to have some phrases that you can use while you're out and about doing your life. You know, people do their best, and oftentimes it doesn't feel like it's enough, or we think to ourselves, wow, what are people thinking that they ask me this or they say that? But we know that they're just doing the best they can with what they have. And so we can use this moment to also teach people about what it is that we're going through. For example, how are you doing today? Well, thanks for asking. My heart is really super tender right now, and I actually could really use a hug. Or, hey, how are you doing? How's it going? I am mourning. I got to tell you, I'm feeling such a deep grief. I've got such a messy emotional reality right now. I don't know that I can really answer that question. Something that respects you and what you're feeling and also has some compassion and acknowledgement for the person that is hopefully authentically wanting to know how it is that you're doing. So, if you're going through grief, if you are experiencing loss, and like I've said, just because we know something isn't in our highest and greatest good, just because we know we have to let go of a person or a job or a version of ourselves, just because we know it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that we don't have a feeling associated with the letting go that is necessary during times of change, uncertainty, and transformation. So if you're grieving, I hope that there's been something in this sharing today that can help you. I hope at the very least you hear me say that you get to grieve. We don't want to turn it into a lifestyle. We don't want to turn it into a story. We've met people that haven't known how to meet their grief and walk with it and process it. And years later, we hear it as a story, as an identity. Now I have compassion because I know that they just don't know how to do it. However, you do now. You're learning. And even though the world out there may not know how to meet you in your time of grief and loss, you do. Even though the world out there may bypass your grief and loss, having already forgotten how tender you feel, you haven't. Even though there may be friends and family in your life that have forgotten and just don't give you the time, perhaps, that they did when it was fresh, you can create that time for yourself. You can bring to yourself what it is that you need in any given moment during your journey through grief. None of it is linear. It is all cyclical. All of these feelings inside the inner landscape, they come, they go, they hang out together. It's just what it is. And nothing is more profound, more meaningful, really, than being present for your grief, because it will reshape you. And it's absolutely a key component to your becoming. So take really good care of yourself, your heart, your body, and know that you are loved. Thanks so much for watching.